Welcome back to the Federation channel. Today, for the holidays, we will take a break from our normal content that focuses on the climate crisis, finance and economics, and, for fun, discuss a question in physics about the matter of consciousness itself. What is it? Where does it come from? Where does it go? Where does it come from? Nobody knows. Now that John, the author of this script, has possibly gotten Cotton Eye Joe stuck in your head, at the end of this video we will include John's secret method to get songs out of your head as a little holiday gift. John told me about it early in our marriage when I was complaining about an earworm, and it generally works for me. I do the editing and a lot of the audio for these videos because John has dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia, which means that when he reads out loud, it comes out halting and stuttering, like Captain Kirk had a love child with Max Headroom. His words, not mine. I just edit and read these things. That science funding video that he narrated is him reading things about a paragraph at a time, resetting, and doing the next paragraph before everything starts drifting. First, however, some disclaimers and explanations. This outlines just one theory on the nature of consciousness. This is not, this is how it works for sure, but rather, I suspect this is how it works. An interpretation for which John has proposed experiments to test, but that have yet to be done. In fact, as the Federation is held in a series of democratically governed irrevocable trusts under his and my estate, respectively, one of the programs in those trusts is intended, along with funding other purely scientific research, to run the experiment series to test his interpretation of quantum physics, as the double-slit experiment was used to bolster the Copenhagen interpretation, whose outcome appeared to support the hypothesis, but which he believes did so for the wrong reasons. Sometimes you can do the right thing for the wrong reasons, after all, and he suspects Copenhagen benefited from that. His experiments support the interpretation that has potential implications for consciousness that will need separate experiments designed by someone with the right research and background. You can find a walkthrough of the interpretation as part of our scientific funding video, which was one of our first videos. Next disclaimer is where those learning disabilities come in. John did not do well in school, so he has no formal training in mathematical physics, and he even struggled in high school. He jokes that English is not his first language, it's just the only one he speaks. This is not to say he has not put in the time on the work, though. He just had to take a very different path to knowledge. He caught the bug when his uncle described the mathematical work of Ramanujan to him in 5th grade or so, and he found it interesting enough that he wanted to learn more about how mathematics can be applied instead in a more physical context, knowing that he struggled with math. This led to his reading A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking, where he began his lifelong love of physics as a hobby. First, it was focusing on figuring out time dilation and black holes, and as he got older, eventually he got very interested in dark matter and dark energy, but mostly dark matter. John likes to focus on where the problems are in systems, as they are an interesting puzzle for him, and the same applies to his interest in economics. He starts from the problems and builds backwards, or from the macro to the micro, when learning systems. John has also spent the better part of the last 10 years in relative isolation because of his fused spine and many complications from burn pit poisoning from his time in Kosovo. In that time, he has spent many hours researching and modeling to try to solve problems that he did not think he would solve because they were difficult, and he could chew on them for hours to distract himself from his constant pain. So when we went to the VA a few years ago to see a neurologist about his nerve complications, he described to her the many types of pain and their degrees, and told her about his pain management technique of retreating into his head to manipulate fluid constructs, to solve difficult problems in physics and economics, that he did not think he would be able to address. But he had come up with what might be an interesting solution to dark matter, and, even if it was not correct, he had applied the model to economics at the monetary level in a way that might be able to address the climate crisis globally. He gave a quick overview of the dark matter theory and the economics involved, since he is aware that neurology is a combination of quantum physics and biochemistry. This is the day he learned about kinesthetic synesthesia, and from there, he decided to get a physics tutor. If you are questioning how a person with his level of learning disability, with such difficulty with numbers, might have a talent for quantum physics and complex systems, here is the definition on the screen from the Scholarly Community Encyclopedia. So while some might be tempted to say that someone without their PhD, having their own theory on physics, economics, and consciousness, is somehow anti-science, there was no intent to share the physics aspect of this project publicly until his neurologist told him about his condition, and he spent 3 months answering questions to someone who did have the training to challenge the work. The result of it, after the theory was explained all the way to the experiments, was for his tutor to cite the adage, "I cannot say you were right, but you're not wrong," followed by, "And that's the best you can do before the experiments are done, and even then you might be right for the wrong reasons, or mostly right and a little wrong, but really that's about the best you can do in theoretical physics. Otherwise, it's called physics," or something to that effect. So as we continue in this explanation of consciousness, please keep that in mind. So you do not have to watch the whole other video. Here is a quick recap of what was covered without the depth. We will link the video below if you want more details. In the interpretation, gravity does not exist in quantum physics, only in relativistic physics, being emergent above the Planck length. Let me give you an example of a common thought exercise that makes a kind of sense from his interpretation that does not make sense in Minkowski space. The Schrödinger's cat thought experiment that Schrödinger used to highlight how absurd quantum physics seemed to him and his contemporaries. It appeared that the cat was dead and alive at the same time until the observer interfered and collapsed the wave function and settled its state in reality. In a relativity-based 3+1 universe interpretation, as physicists know it, it makes no sense. Now, throw out your relativistic thinking for a moment and imagine that all of space and time is emergent from the local values of the Higgs field and the object in motion, and much of quantum physics takes place at the border of and beyond those variables. At this point, he cites Sir Roger Penrose's work on quantum consciousness, as well as quantum physics' role in neurology. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that the emergent aspect of his work is correct, putting aside the fluid dynamics aspects, and that Penrose's and his belief on consciousness is accurate. This implies that the separation between relativity and quantum physics is time and space, which means consciousness itself exists outside of time and space, being quantum in nature. It might be argued, perhaps, that consciousness itself is the fifth element in this interpretation, with the other four being dark matter, heat, positive electromagnetism, and negative electromagnetism. If this theory is correct, it means that it is only your consciousness being entangled to your body that puts you here, now, watching this video on consciousness. If that tie to your body is severed, your consciousness, beyond time and space, still exists. It is just no longer here, now, with us. It is instead non-local, just like quantum physics. Looking back to the relativistic universe we live in within space and time, you would see all of time and space from before your birth, during your life, and after your death. You are, in effect, both alive and dead from your perspective outside of time. Your consciousness is the observer, your body is the cat, and your body's actions cause the wave function collapse guided by your consciousness's decisions conveyed through your body, and the universe is the box itself. Apply this model to the debate in physics between a deterministic universe and free will, and you can see the implications. In the interpretation, they are actually both right, as while the universe is deterministic, your consciousness exists from outside determinism, and in fact makes decisions that create that determination within the limited scope of your life and body's influence. Yes, the universe itself is deterministic, but you are a limited co-creator within this deterministic tapestry of reality. Given that you have free will, what do you believe for yourself of the odds that you would turn down the opportunity to be a co-creator more than once, may I ask? Why would you entangle a body only once when there is an entire multiverse to co-create with us? Were you planning to do something else with timeless eternity? This is not a simulation, but a gift. The main concern with this work, and why it is so dependent on the experimental phase, is not just that it's good science alone, but look again at the description of John's condition from the Scholarly Community Encyclopedia. There is the possibility that even if he is right on some things, maybe the fluid dynamics aspect is just his condition running home to mama. That said, there is standing for the hypothesis that quantum physics is fluid in nature, as covered in this Veritasium video. Now, bringing this back to John's peculiar neurology, given that all consciousness is equally capable, in and of itself, of doing this, but it is only his body's crossed neurology that allows him to model these complex systems. He sacrifices, however, being able to do certain things that the school system demands. In school, he could not get teachers to sit down and let him ask questions for hours, so he could learn in his order with the necessary allowances to find the words to express his thoughts back to them through his various disabilities. For a long time in his life, the only way he could express the advantages of his neurology was in sports and martial arts, particularly fencing, where his kinesthetic empathy, mirror touch synesthesia, and strong spatial awareness gave him a competitive advantage, along with some other neurological anomalies that seem related as well. What changed his life, in his view, was meeting me. Not only do we share many interests in common, but I also take the time to do what the education system does not. His fluidic constructs do not separate between ideas, concepts, and functions, visually speaking. There is no "start here for clarity." If he wants to say something from a concept he works in, he needs a prompt, so he knows where to start, and sometimes has trouble remembering the words for something, because his memory works more in concepts or functions than words. If he does manage to get started on his own, you will likely get a brain dump of epic proportions, and sometimes he will not intuitively know that something needs explanation because it is a connection derived from modeling that is visually apparent to him, but not intuitive to the listener. For him to get to the point where he can explain his own thoughts in complex matters is a long and sometimes frustrating process. While my PhD is in 16th century French literature, I have also studied and published in pedagogy, which is the study of teaching and learning. While, thanks to shared interests, we both have a strong baseline understanding of many of the same topics to make things easier for him, my understanding of teaching allows me to whittle it down to a degree before he goes and tries to refine it further with others. Each time someone asks a question, he can touch in his mind an aspect of the model, and it unpacks its contents to him. But unless someone takes the time to unpack those contents for other people, it is simply a fluidic network blob of understanding. This is why, for example, he considers me the best teacher he has had. not because he has not had some great mentors that generously shared their skills and knowledge with him, but because he now has someone that helps him articulate his thoughts and complex systems from the labyrinth of his constructs from a place of patience and understanding. John did start speaking late, although he was not mute, but there was an entire aspect of his thought that he could barely share. In a sense, according to him, before we met, it was like not having a voice for an entire aspect of his mind. How do you refer to the person who, in a sense, gave you your voice for the first time in your life? Everyone watching this has their own unique neurology, and it is only the hierarchical thinking of elites that tries to devalue you to make it cheaper to exploit your labor. Those same people also corrupt your leaders to take away your voice, only giving you a choice between one set of self-serving bad ideas and another. That same hierarchical thinking infects the very education system that we count on, where neurodiversity is marginalized and treated as the subject of nonsense conspiracy theories about vaccines and fluoride in the water. In that view, autism is something that needs to be feared and cured through the encouragement of institutional abuse rather than understood. That same society treats gender fluidity as an abomination rather than as the expression of an immortal consciousness that exists beyond the limitations of biology or their petty machinations for power over the working class. No one should have to live without a voice and suffer abuse because they do not conform to the expectations of a system that is laid out by self-interested elites who believe in supremacy over all and seek to marginalize and harm people that do not meet their arbitrary standards as an example to others. The Federation is an attempt to give all marginalized people a voice through its ranked choice democratic structure, to serve as a vehicle for them to free themselves of the abuse of the 1%. Most of our leaders are fundamentally supremacists in nature who carry water for the donor class. The only thing they debate is how those they deem less valuable should be treated. We are, likely, all equally capable consciousnesses, limited by the physiology of our current bodies and our command over them, in overcoming the fear that protected us in the wild. Fear has been weaponized against us by those who wish to subjugate us, and the only thing that they cannot agree on is how, who, and how much. In the end, we have a will towards a purpose, and the hierarchy of the 1% is there to bend you to their purpose, not your own. This is where the UBI can be so important, because, as Carl Widerquist points out, a UBI is the power to walk away. When you are free to walk away, you have the freedom to follow your purpose, and the 1% has to either give you a better offer for you to delay your purpose, or offer you something so compelling that it becomes part of your purpose. I hope you have found this an interesting essay on the nature of consciousness. For those of you who may still have Cotton Eye Joe stuck in your head, here is the promised way to be able to clear any song out of your mind. Think of a song that gets stuck in your head the most. For a bit, days or weeks, whatever it takes, you think of that song anytime you catch yourself not having it stuck in your head. Eventually, you will be able to get that song out of your head relatively easily. Going forward, anytime you get an earword stuck in your head, just go back to that song and get it running in your head again, and then you will eventually just tune it out as you are going about your day, and the song that was plaguing you should no longer be stuck in your head when you are done, as long as you don't make a point to think about it. If you do, repeat the process as needed. The better you get at it, the easier it gets. In case you're wondering, my song is The Who's Happy Jack. May you and your families have a great holiday season and lives of dignity and purpose. If someone tries to insist that science and biology determine your destiny as a mere mortal being to serve their interest, or cherry-pick pseudoscience to question your true infinite nature, remember that we are all more than what they claim, and equal. Peace be with you.